The views and opinions expressed by the hosts and guests of the radio program Jeffery are solely their opinions, and they are not necessarily those of the management or staff of the Nassau Guardian or Star 106.5.
I have never said, or ever said, or suggested that children born to non-Bahamian parents in the Bahamas are stateless. If Mr. Smith is referring to children of Haitians born in the Bahamas, the government of Haiti has affirmed that the children of Haitians born anywhere are Haitian at birth, so they are not stateless. Thousands of children hold them in this country today. This is not a new requirement. That is the existing law, and all non-nationals in the country are expected to comply with the law, and most are complying. So the question of deporting someone who's stateless is in that position does not arise. The Bahamas government does have some say over whether someone is registered or not, because there's a proviso to the constitutional provision. There are also provisions in the Bahamas Nationality Act which say how you can go ahead and apply, and the Bahamas government can apply those provisions and refuse to register someone in those circumstances.
This is Jeffery on Star 106.5 FM.
Ever since the policy was enacted on November the 1st, well, let's not say enacted, ever since the policy was carried out on November 1st of 2014, and a further enfleshment of that policy announced early this year by the Honourable Minister of Immigration and Foreign Affairs and Immigration, the Honourable Fred Mitchell, there has been significant pushback in the press and discussion and debate and to some extent controversy. Well, this afternoon I have asked my dear brother and friend, the Honourable Minister, to come here to this studio and to answer questions from me concerning the government's implementation of this policy, its genesis, its foundation, the thinking behind it, and the intentions and the objectives in achievement. He is here this afternoon, the Honourable Fred Audley Mitchell. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I take this opportunity every time to tell the Bahamian people that you and I have been friends for over 50 years. I tell them every single time. As a matter of fact,
giving away my age, man.
55 years to be exact. How are you doing, Mr. Minister?
Well, thank you, man. I really wanted to start off anything I said today by extending my congratulations to St. Augustine's College on the celebration of its 70th anniversary as a school.
Yes.
And to repeat what I said in the House of Assembly today, that when my parents allowed me to choose to go to St. Augustine's College, in the handoff from Dawson Conliffe at Easton Junior to Bonaventure Dean at St. Augustine's, it was one of the best decisions they made on my behalf. And it was a life-changing experience, and I'm grateful for them having made that choice to go to school in an excellent institution, which remains excellent today, and which is responsible in large measure for what I am today. And I want to congratulate them on this important milestone and say congratulations to the principal, Sonia Foster, who is in fact my classmate, Sonia Foster Knowles, my classmate from the class of 1970.
I understand that you and others go around this country bragging that you all were the best graduating class of St. Augustine's in its 70-year history. How dare you?
No, I wouldn't dare do such a thing. I can...
Philip Galanis claims to be his class. Of course, Phil Galanis, Dr. Hubert Minnis, the Archbishop Patrick Pinder, yes, and so on, claim to be the best graduate.
Well, we have some important... I mentioned
Sonia
Knowles,
the Chief Justice.
Of course, the President of the College of the Bahamas,
Rodney Smith,
class of 70, Dr. Smith. The Chief Justice retired, Sir Michael Barnett.
Yes.
The former Permanent Secretary to the Office of Prime Minister, Teresa Butler.
Yes.
And now Permanent Secretary to the Office of Prime Minister, Cresswell Stirrup.
Right.
All from the class of 1970. So people have done well.
Yeah. How are you doing, Mr. Minister? You are in the heat of, I would say, the storm, as it were, now over this issue of immigration. but you don't seem to wear it with any degree of concern and worry at all.
No, I don't. Not only do I wear it, but I have none. So, I've been a public figure
All
since
your life.
1976, when I stepped out of school and started writing a column in the newspaper. So, I mean, it comes with the territory. You can't do things to please everybody, and you know, I say to people, even at the height of its popularity in 1968, 40% of the people didn't agree with the PLP, and they voted against them. So,
Right.
you know, that's how life is.
The Honourable Loftus Roker, former Minister of Immigration, criticized you and says it's good what you are having to endure by way of criticism, because when he sought to implement an immigration policy back in the 70s, you were out there at Fox Hill campaigning and criticizing and protesting at the treatment of illegal migrants at that time. So it's good for you. You know how we say that's good for you.
I found that a very curious remark, and generally, you know, Mr. Roca is iconic in my mind, and so I you know, tend not to respond to things he has to say. I figure, you know, he's up there in that category, so say whatever you like. But it's a curious thing, because just I was trying to remember what he could possibly be talking about, and maybe, you know, if he feels inclined, one day he'd say, because I don't recall that at all. He said, I think the comment was in the 1980s.
Yeah.
In 1980, I was a student at Harvard. I returned home, worked at the Office of Prime Minister till 1981. Then I became the managing editor of the Herald until 1983. Then I went to law school until 1985. I came back for 9 months in 1985 and lived in Grand Bahama. Was involved in my public relations business, no activism then. And then in the fall of '85, I went to bar school. So that was in London, finished in '86. And when I came back, I was actually one of his speechwriters. So I find that very curious. I mean, his speech given demitting office, for example, in 1987, was drafted in my PR office. So. But, you know, if that's his recollection, fine. I think the relevance of today is not, you know, what happened in the past, but the fact is we are where we are, and we're taking the appropriate measures to deal with it. And, you know, those who have iconic status can actually say and do what they wish. That's what the benefit of old age gives you.
In our 48-year history since majority rule, and now coming up on whatever 42nd year since independence, this issue of immigration has been an extremely tense, difficult, controversial, emotionally wrought one. So I want to go back, all the way back, if you wish. Around the cabinet table, and I'm not asking you by any means, and I know you won't divulge any cabinet confidential and secretive information, but what was the genesis of, and you had spoken about it well before November 1st of 2014, several presentations, as a matter of fact, but of course Bahamians don't necessarily listen, and I understand all of that. But tell me the genesis of your thinking, meaning the government's thinking, that we need to do something by way of identifying documentarily persons who are in this country and those who are not here with some legitimacy, whether it's a work permit or citizenship or residency and so on and so forth. It's got to go. How did this come about? And why take this very, obviously now, controversial step to do so?
The genesis of it is really the promise in the campaign to have Bahamians first, and also to have immigration reform. There's a promise in the Charter for Governance that if we came to office, this is what we would do. Now, one of the issues I think that worked on people's minds was in 2007, it was believed by the PLP, by many in the PLP, that one of the reasons we lost the election was because of the perceptions about our toughness toward immigration in the period 2002 to 2007. And the FNM was able to use that in the population of Haitian descent to say, if you elect the PLP to office again, that this is going to be contrary to the interests of people of Haitian descent, which of course is untrue, but a good message they sold. So that is the beginnings of a cleavage which reflects itself in the society generally, between those people who are what I would call accommodationists on the one side and those people who are the expulsionists on the other side. So those are the two extremes of the debate. Then you fast forward to 2012. I think the situation had changed significantly, because what was happening increasingly was large numbers of migrants arriving on these boats, and it appeared that we simply did not have the means to stop it. We didn't have the equipment in the Royal Bahamas Defense Force, and it looked as if all you had to do is just get on a boat and you could make yourself up here. And the height of this was the fall of last year, in October or so, where we had 1, 2, 3 days of this, of 100 people arriving on a boat. Fortunately, in those cases, they were interdicted by the Bahamian Navy and sent back to their home country. I think we had been talking about this, and certainly at the the budget debate in July of last year, we spoke about the implementation of the passport requirement and the residency permit, all of which are in the existing law, but strict enforcement of it. And that was put out there for comment. By the time October rolled around, it was clear there could be no stepping back. We had to do so. And the main thing it does is it sends a psychological signal out. We did two things. First, you cannot, if you don't have legal status in the Bahamas, apply for a work permit in the Bahamas. And that was precipitated by the fact that people were clearly coming off these boats, finding a friendly Bahamian, coming to immigration, and getting status in the country. And that was sending a signal back in the home country that all you had to do was do that. Just get on the boat, come here, you're straight. So you had a constant supply and stream of this happening. We needed to do something to put a stop to that. So now you can only apply if you have no legal status. You can only apply if you've been certified as having been seen by our officer in your home country. That's one. And number two is everybody's got to have the passport of their nationality, including those who have this right at the age of 18 to make application to be registered as citizens of the Bahamas. And they also have to have an immigration status, which they did not have before. So those are the two measures, and that's why I think it came about.
How are they going to have an immigration status if you were born in this country to an undocumented alien? What is the status that you are going to have? And I know you're going to come to the Constitution of Haiti, but I give you an opportunity to explain it. How does that happen?
The interesting thing, I think, is when you actually do a census of this, you will find that people are not as widely undocumented as you think. I would guess that, and this is just a guess, that most of the students, for example, who are in schools, their parents have work permits. They just never bothered to get the residency permit for their children. And in those circumstances, then there's no issue. Once your parents are here lawfully, you can get the residency permit. The more difficult issue is if your parents are undocumented, as you say. But in our meetings with the Ministry of Education, and the question of who's allowed into the schools is entirely a matter for the Ministry of Education, not the Department of Immigration.
But the Ministry of Education must apply either the policy or the law.
And they said that they will.
Well, that's what the minister said, the Honourable Jerome Fitzgerald.
But as I say, that's not an issue I speak to, because our rules of engagement do not allow us to have immigration officers go into the school and drag children out of the school. So that's off the table. But the way it appears it will work, and I think the minister will be making an announcement shortly, because registrations begin for the next for the fall term in March, I'm told, which is in about 30 days. And this requirement will be there for people to have that paperwork in order.
Understand.
As a generality. And what is agreed is, in the individual circumstances, it will be referred back to the ministry, and they'll make a decision on the specific individual.
Ministry of Education.
Yes, right.
Okay. Now, let's walk through this. A person is here as an undocumented alien, an adult. Your contention, and the law provides, but let me just speak to it. Your contention is, let's say that person is a Haitian. That person, by virtue of the Constitution of Haiti, the Republic of Haiti, has an entitlement to be registered as a citizen upon obviously making the proper applications.
No, it's more definitive than that. You are Haitian at birth, wherever you're born, if your parents are Haitian.
So, if they happen to land here in the Bahamas, they have no documentation whatsoever. They are eventually identified as your government has required them to be identified. They can go down to the Haitian embassy, and with the proper application, they can gain a passport.
Yes, they can.
The children of those persons, having gained a passport, you say now, can themselves get a passport, because they would also be, by virtue of the Haitian Constitution, entitled to citizenship at birth.
Well, what happened today, of course, is having met the criticism about the first generation, that is the Haitian child who's born to Haitian, born in Haiti, but the Haitian child is born here. Now they've raised the issue of what happens to the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren. Well, you know, we're suddenly to become experts on Haitian law. I'm not an expert on Haitian law. What I said is this: if someone is actually stateless, the Bahamas has signed on to a number of conventions, and subject to correction, I think it is even expressed in the Bahamas Nationality Act, that if someone is actually stateless, the Bahamas has an obligation to provide status for that individual if that person was born here. But that's a different issue than possibly stateless.
But but help me understand. How can somebody be actually stateless?
Jamaicans, for example. The child of a Jamaican born in the Bahamas, unless his or her parents actually apply to the Jamaican government to get Jamaican citizenship, is not Jamaican at birth.
Understand.
Right. So the Bahamas Constitution does not confer citizenship at birth on that individual either.
Understand.
So in those circumstances, that individual is stateless.
Okay. But what status is given to such a person? I know you talk about the treaties and international obligations, but what status is given to a person who is stateless? Let me get to a break, and then we can talk about this more substantively. The Honourable Fred Mitchell is my special guest here this evening, because you see the conundrum. We've got somebody in the Bahamas who is considered to be stateless. We are asking, by virtue of our commitment in these treaties, to repose some status on these persons. What is that status? They cannot get a work permit because they are not old enough to get a work permit. They cannot get a residency permit because, again, the law doesn't, the Immigration Act doesn't provide. What is the status? We're coming right back after this. Honourable Fred Mitchell is my special guest. He's here this afternoon in his capacity as the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Immigration. He is also here in the capacity of one of my best friends from way, way, way back when. Let me ask you, how do you divide your time as Minister of Foreign Affairs and Immigration, which happen to be two full-time ministries now having collided in one person?
I would say like 60-40.
60 what?
At the moment in favor of immigration, I think.
That's because of the nature of this particular policy?
Right now, I think until we get through this period, you know.
You would complain always that we face a capacity problem.
Yeah.
Are we still, to some degree, incapacitated in the work required of the Department of Immigration?
Yes. I've started, you know, I call it my hobby horse at the moment, which is the question of the public administration and how it serves the country, and the amount of work we have to do to get that fixed. Because it should be that anybody who's a minister of the government ought to be able to give an order, an instruction, and that instruction ought to be able to carry out, once it's a lawful instruction, fairly quickly and with certainty.
How long does it take for your orders to be carried out, generally?
I think that I'd use the delivery of a service as a better example, and that is today, if you want to get a work permit and the decision is taken to grant you that work permit, if you pay it today, it still takes you 6 weeks or so to get the actual permit in your hand.
Okay.
I think that's unacceptable.
It is unacceptable.
Yeah.
And you have given orders to do what?
Well, to speed up the process.
But how could you do that
without manpower and equipment and money? I mean, that obviously is important to getting all that resolved. And of course, you know, the business of the allocation of government resources is also a question of lobbying within the government itself for resources, because, you know, there's a fierce competition for these resources.
Sure.
So what I was saying to the Bahamas Outlook seminar, that my own feeling is perhaps if we can get the Exchequer to agree to price these services.
That's the Treasury.
At the level of the cost of the service, that perhaps we can get the resources then to actually perform a rational, certain, quick service.
Is it underpriced now in your estimation?
I think so.
It's $1,000 for a work permit renewal for a domestic worker.
Yeah.
$1,000. That's underpriced?
Well, I don't want to speak to the specific, except that the discussion is not really at that level. It's really at the permanent residence level.
Okay, $10,000.
That product is properly priced.
You think that is?
No, I'm saying that
it is not.
That's where the discussion is taking place at the moment, not on the work permit.
But that one is $10,000.
Yes, right.
That's a pretty hefty price. And you're saying that that potentially is underpriced?
Underpriced.
Potentially.
Yes, right. That's the argument.
I'm coming to this story about the status given to...
But I think things like passport services are underpriced. So that's
$100 for now a passport.
No, I think it's $50.
$50 for a passport, which is a 5-year passport. So you don't have to see me no more. It's $10 a year.
That's underpriced. Yeah.
And you wouldn't want to say, but you're thinking it should be double that, triple that?
I think it should be consistent at least with what the prices are in the region.
And that is?
I think most people are up around $100.
Okay.
Yeah.
By the way,
then you should be able to charge for a rush service.
Yes, of course.
We also have a problem where people chronically lose their passports, and there ought to be add-on costs for that as well, for replacing those.
In terms of the passport, I know that there's an e-passport.
Right.
What is the policy or the law which stipulates, and it might be because we are signed on to some regulation with the passport unions of the world, what is it? When is the date by which all Bahamians, all passport holders, or those who wish passports, must have an e-passport?
November 2015.
That is November this year. You must have an e-passport, or you will not be allowed to travel with any other passport.
Well, that's what the intention of the rule is. I'm told now that people going through the U.S. system are being questioned more closely on these written passports, so we're asking people to replace them now.
Wow. And is, in terms of passport, the kind of wait duration of a passport processing, collection, and so on, still 8 weeks?
8 weeks, yeah.
Again, an issue of capacity?
Capacity, yeah.
Well, and you figure that because you are such a genteel young man, you don't have the fire in the belly like you used to years ago when you used to burn the flag and throw rock up on Clifford Park there and burn Guy Fawkes in effigy. You know, when you were a radical in those days, you're not a radical around the cabinet table, so you could get more money for your apartments like you ought to.
I'm not sure it's radicalism. There's a lot of work that has to be done to unclog the inertia in our system, and that's a very tough job at the moment. Let me describe it.
Where is passport, work permit, immigration, money-making enterprises? Where are those in the order of priority of your government?
I think they are at a high priority. I think what you will find is that either for reasons of timing or, these things get ordered not just by immigration. They have to be ordered in the priorities of the general government. As I said, there's a lobbying job going on. So, you continue at it. I think part of the reason that it's important to address these issues publicly is the public needs to be engaged in the business of the public administration, because even at the highest levels of the government, there are constraints as to, without public support, as to what you can actually do to resolve some of these issues.
So you ask the public to what? Voice more their concerns, demonstrate their discomfort and displeasure with the way things are, and hopefully.
I think that moves projects along, because people respond to public pressure.
Okay. In terms of the, again, just staying with the passport for just a moment, I mean, you collected $10 million in January from VAT at the border. Your Minister of State says it's going to be $100 million and $80 million over the course of this year from VAT from the border. We are on the way to probably collecting $300 to $350 million. Is that going to ease the pressure a little bit on the services that must be performed by your two very important departments under your responsibility?
Well, one of the things economists tell you is when your income goes up, you adjust your spending to reflect your income.
Yes.
So you have to be careful about that, because one of the reasons why the tax base and system has been addressed is not only the question of how to pay for existing resources, but also to bring the finances back in some order.
Right.
So one has to watch the spending patterns carefully and not spend everything that you get.
Understand. Let me just stay with the department. Last time you were here, I'm talking about immigration, the last time you were here, you were saying that this capacity issue was being addressed. There were more immigration officers that were coming out of training, and you had reviewed some of the policies of the former administration where persons who were on these work programs had been let go because of budgetary constraints and so on. But I understand that a review of that was to take place. So do we have more officers now? Do we have more staff at the department? Are hours more longer? Do you have your shift system in place? What is going on?
All of that's in place. I mean, but it's still not enough.
Okay.
I think the next class is going to start shortly. And I'm always loath to do that, because what's going to happen now is there'll be a deluge of people asking about this. And so, but anyway, the next class starts shortly. It's already chosen. So, but still, you have a department that's 300 people, and
and you need 8.
You probably
100,
need 900 or so.
900,
yeah. 300,
30% of what you need.
Yeah.
To what degree and extent do you have a challenge because of the displeasure by the unions? The immigration and customs unions, one body, but immigration and customs, Mr. Smith and so on, that, hey, listen, you all owe us some money and you need to pay us that money, otherwise there's going to be some discomfort. And just recently, meaning before Christmas, you saw what happened. So is there anything that impinges on the difficulties with capacity in your department?
No.
None at all?
No.
You mean those persons, despite their displeasure, I use that word again, continue to work as if they are not displeased?
Well, the union has not taken any action that I recall. I mean, they've been involved in industrial action, but that hasn't crippled the essential work of the department.
Right.
So I wouldn't put that on them.
Belonger status, or some status for persons who are here, what you call stateless. We have a treaty with the international community that those persons in this jurisdiction, like other jurisdictions who are signatories to it, would be given status. But what status? There's no provision in our Constitution for these people.
Well,
so that has to go through some kind of referendum.
No.
There is no. No, I know, but I mean, you can always do it through the law.
Yeah,
I understand.
The Nationality Act already gives the minister the authority to give citizenship to any child. So
only if that child is a citizen, that child is a child of a citizen of the Bahamas.
No.
According to the Nationality Act, unless I've read it wrong.
No.
You can't just take any child, Mr. Minister, from wherever and give citizenship upon that child.
Yes.
According to the national, I will review it again, but
Yeah, 6-2.
that just, so if that's the case, then you've got plenty of people out there who claim to be, quote, stateless, many of whom happen to be of Haitian descent.
The operative word you use is claimed.
Well,
And you see one of our members got up and, trying to be smarter than everybody else to say, well, okay, you met the case with the first generation, but the grandchildren and great-grandchildren, what about them?
right.
And I said, well, first of all, you got to show that they are actually stateless, and I'm willing to bet they're not. That's
Because
just,
if you trace it back, they can easily prove some nationality
Yeah,
or
sure.
some attachment to some sovereignty and so on.
sure.
Okay.
They're not actually stateless.
So is it the policy or is it?
What this is designed to do is, and this is where the power, I don't know of specific examples where my predecessors have used the power, but it's designed to meet a situation where social services has a number of children, for example, that were abandoned by their parents, and they don't know who the parents are. So in the cases of wards of the state, they can apply on behalf of those children and get citizenship for those children, because effectively they're Bahamians, having been abandoned by their parents. So there's that. That's what the provision was designed for.
Do you have any intentions of invoking that provision, sir?
Well, the law is there, so anybody can apply.
No, I
The
understand,
question
but-
is, the cabinet decides citizenship, even though it says the minister.
I understand.
I mean, the cabinet acts in a quasi-judicial capacity, and if the case fits in law, then we are bound to act in accordance with the law.
Well, you're going to have a number of persons who present on September of 2015 with, again, the claim of being stateless.
Yeah, but
Or persons who never ever had set foot in Haiti, probably can't point it out on a map.
that's not my business, and that's not the issue in law. The issue in law is what is your citizenship, and that can be determined very easily by just tracing where you were born and who your parents are. I'll tell you in 5 seconds.
Are you simply asking for people to just simply have a document? Just have a document. In other words, if your parents are Haitians and they never bothered to go down to the Haitian embassy and get a passport, thus you are able to eventually get a passport or get some kind of status here, meaning a resident and so on, because you all were just lazy or afraid or whatever it is. What this is attempting to do with this policy initiative of the government is to light a fire under your parents. Go and get a passport, document yourself in this country, document your offspring, and let's make sure that every single soul in this country is properly documented, legally authorized to be here, and is following the dictates and the mandates of the laws of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
Well, first of all, I try to avoid of sticking this on any particular nationality.
Well, I got
So
you.
that's the first thing. It's a generic policy.
I understand.
It just says.
But you know where
if
they
you're born to
mostly
non- if you-
fall.
Yeah, if you're born to non-nationals, you have an obligation to do certain things, and that's the law of the Bahamas. And immigration checks from time to time, and if you're not in compliance with that, then you're subject to the strictures of the law. That's the way it is. And there's no distinction between man, woman, or child, or race, or ethnicity, or national origin. That's the way it is. So,
Now, you say that it is the Ministry, Department of Education who, and you all don't get into each other's business and so on, but come on, collective responsibility. You're all one government. There's no one arm over here doing, like the Bible say, don't let your left hand know what your right hand does. No. You're carrying out a policy of the government, whether you happen to be foreign affairs, immigration, or education, or whatever. You're carrying a policy out of the government. The point is, do you expect that if these people, children that is, don't have documentation come September, and it could be a challenge for them to do so, here it is, the Bahamas can't get you proper paperwork, documentation under 8 weeks, that's 2 months, and that's the best scenario. It is very possible that though people may be trying their very best efforts, they can't get documentation in time for September. Do you expect that there are going to be some deportation of children in this country back to lands they know nothing of?
I can't predict.
Yes, you
anything.
can, Mr. Minister. You have all our knowledge of you're the smartest cabinet minister in the country. You know precisely what's going to happen.
No.
Can you say if that's going to be the policy of your government?
I can only answer the generality.
Okay, go ahead.
And the generality is children go with their parents. So the question is where are the parents and what is the status of the parents?
So you're using the children to get at the parents? Is that the attempt? Not you, Fred Mitchell, but are you, the government, using this as a way of getting at these parents so that you could use the,
Look,
threat?
this is only an administrative measure which deals with having people documented to be in your country. We have an international obligation to know who's within our borders and to not have this.
You have a sovereign obligation to know who's within our
as a
borders.
staging point for nefarious activities for the 3 contiguous states to this country: Cuba, Cuba, the Turks and Caicos, and the United States. And that's our obligation. And so we got to know who's here. And everybody who's here should be documented to be here and show that they have a right to be here. Now, what has happened is the hue and cry is coming from people who are practicing what I call the business of victimhood. Poor me, I come from so-and-so, look what you're doing to me, look, And, you just say to people, look, cut it out, because all you have to do is just go and get things regularized. People say, I don't know what to do. Well, how about putting your left foot down, followed by the right foot, and just go to the immigration office and apply. That'll start. Simple. And you were asking about the belongers permit. Well,
You don't have such a thing in law.
no, not at the moment. And this is the irony. These reforms are being held up by this noisy crowd who are opposing a measure.
Who's stopping the government of Bahamas from passing any law with a majority of 30 to nothing?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Okay, then.
Right. But we know how life is. And the thing is, they are opposing something which is designed to help the very people that they say they want to help, which is this category of people who have no status, having been born in the country to non-Bahamian parents, and they have no status right now. This would give a status, confer a status. You can get a status right now, which is a general worker permit or a residency permit, but that permit costs $1,000.
That's right.
Right now. So we said, in order to deal with this group of people, we would create this new creature called belongers permit for this category of persons, and that category will cost $25 and $100 processing fee. And this crew is all about the place making noise about this and that and so on and so forth. But the existing law today is they got to pay $1,000.
Yes. And the belongers status is not in law. It's not a law at this time, but you're
coming,
creating
yeah.
one. You're going to attach it to what, the Nationality Act or Immigration
No,
Act?
it's going to be an amendment to the Immigration Act.
Amendment to the Immigration Act. So belongers status. Now, is that going to apply to people who the Constitution identified in between that 0 and 18?
Yeah.
That's going to apply
It's
to
gonna be
those.
available to those and to the children of those people who are the children of citizens pursuant to Article 3.2 of the Constitution, because that's another one of these arcane provisions.
And will this belongers status eventually permit those children, if they happen to get there before 18 years of age, like College of the Bahamas, not to be treated as if you're a foreign resident and have to pay the foreign resident fee, and
Well, I
you'll be
thought
able
that
to
had
go
been
and get a
eliminated
job,
anyway.
and you could open a bank account. Will the belongers
Well,
status
you'll be
have
able to open a bank account because you'll have a status, which you can't do now.
could get a driver's license and national insurance and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And this would kind of give them so much so the inside track on gaining citizenship and so on. I want to address something coming up on the other side of this break at 17 minutes after 5 o'clock. The Honourable Fred Mitchell, who is the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Immigration. I keep saying national insurance. You got ambitions of being a national insurance? They say I'm a prophet. You got ambitions of being national insurance?
I can't add.
You got
I have a problem
I thought
with
you were
that.
one of Father Magnus's proteges. I mean, you were the dodecahedras. And
He confused me with that.
we're coming right back.
Yes.
That's Jeffery, Star 106 and Cable Bahamas Channel 5. Hi, folks. Pleasure to welcome you. Listen, you can text me if you have a question for the minister, 376 3868. That's 376-3868. Now, I wanted to ask you this question because I understand that you've got a rather peculiar commentary in this respect. We are signatories to the United Nations Conventions on the Rights of the Child. We became signatories in 1991, 2 years after that convention was ratified by the United Nations. Article 28 says the following: states parties recognize the right of the child to education with a view to achieving this right progressively. And on the basis of equal opportunity, they shall in particular make primary education compulsory and available free to all. And then it goes on to encourage the development of different forms of secondary education, so on and so forth. Make higher education accessible, make educational, vocational information guidance available and accessible to all children. But that specific Article 1, subsection A, seems to demand, or at least tie to some extent, the hand of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
In what respect?
From Ministry of Education putting any of these children out of school. California faced the same problem, and the United States Supreme Court says if they show up, whether you know them to be illegal or not, you've got to educate them.
Well, that's the law of the Bahamas says that children 16 and under have to be in school, and it doesn't make any reference to nationality. That's why I said the issue of who gets into the school is the Ministry of Education's decision.
Yeah, but you can't have a government divided against itself. The Bible again talks about this. What you mean, Mr. Minister? Mr. Minister, please. If you say, as a government, out of one side of your mouth, you have to have status, meaning document. You've got to bring everybody, not just Jeffrey or Fred or the great white buffalo, but everybody. And then on the other hand, you're saying it is up to the ministry to decide, or the department to decide, if or if not. I don't understand that.
Well, I mean, you're saying that the law is what it is, and it's treaty obligations. So there are lots of things going around, and the administrative compromises have to be made in order to make it work. But the fact is, the law says in the Bahamas that where any law conflicts with the Immigration Act prevails. That's the law. Now the question is, does the immigration officer go into the school?
Well, this isn't
does the immigration officer go into the school and throw the children out? Our rules of engagement don't permit that. What it says is the Ministry of Education decides who gets entry into the schools.
the Ministry of Education cannot decide anything than what you have signed on by international treaty.
Well, our law.
The minister says that it's resolute. They are resolute.
Treaties aren't justiciable. They aren't justiciable. What is justiciable is the Education Act.
It isn't justiciable, and you might want to explain that for the people. In other words, it cannot be challenged in law, in court. I understand, but you and I know that we are not an island unto ourselves. Right. We happen to be a part of the League of Nations or the United Nations. And you recognize that we out there in the international community asking people to come and visit us, asking people to be investors in our country, asking people to come and do business with us, and so on. We are looking for loans from the Inter-American Development Bank, IMF. We are looking for technical assistance. So yes, we have the right to do any damn thing we want to do in our country without looking outside and saying whatever we want to say. However, you know that when we do these kinds of things on our own and abrogate some of our sacred responsibilities, whether they are enshrined in law or not, there could be, I'm not saying there will be, but there could be implications to negative to our best interests.
Yeah, but the thing is, all of what the policy on this is what I'm saying. As Minister of Immigration, I do not want to speak or pronounce on matters for the Ministry of Education.
All right.
And I won't.
Okay.
The Minister of Education has already said what his policy is going to be about entry into the schools.
Yes.
All I'm going to speak to is what the law says on immigration. As a generality, everyone has to have some evidence of permission to be in the Bahamas if you're not behaving.
Why does your government, our government, let me not say your, but it's our government, institute these policies with what appears to be a moment's notice without giving people the depth and breadth of some lead time? Here's what I mean. Okay, it sounds as if you got some lead time up to September. But you and I know, Mr. Minister, that public sector institutions, not only in this country, but certainly this country, Haiti and so on, that most times what your objective, while noble, and I believe a lot of Bahamians support it, in the majority I believe, it would have been more fair. And I think the former Minister of Foreign Affairs may have spoken to this immigration, to have given more lead time. Why wouldn't you have given till January of 2016, September of 2016? That nobody can have any possible excuse that it's too short a time and so on. And then also, like Belinda Wilson, president of BUT, says, Bahamas Union of Teachers, you're asking for people to come up with $125. For you, rich man Fred Mitchell, that's no problem. It's no problem for me. But there might be people out there who struggle with having to meet this demand on top of the new imposition of VAT. And you say what, sir?
Well, I mean, there's an argument that non-nationals who are public work, the children of work permit holders, shouldn't be in the public system at all, because what you're doing is subsidizing their education. We haven't gone there. You know, but many countries, in Barbados, if you're the child of a non-national, you can't go into the public school system. Only Barbadians can be in the public school system. So I mean, but that's an issue. The other thing is, given the culture in the country, there's not a perfect time to start anything. And over here, you better start it, or you'll be talking till you're blue in the face. So, you know, when 2016 comes around, the same worrywarts will be around saying, oh, well, you know, we need to give them another 6 months. You know, the argument I was using is, we went and postponed the start of VAT to the 1st of January. And if I recall, when the 1st of January came, the sky was actually supposed to fall down the next morning. Of course, here we are, 30 days into the new year, and the sky's still up there. The
39 days.
Yeah. So, I mean, you listen to people yapping their gums and carrying on from one thing to the next. The issue for some people is they want you to do nothing. Just leave the status quo and let us drift along into this kind of no man's land. And then they have the joy of copying and complaining that you're doing nothing. But when you do something, they then say, oh, no, you're doing something, but that's the wrong thing to do. I think you just have to start. And given our culture, again, as the public dialogue goes along, you can just tweak the policies to meet the exigencies as time goes on. And that's what was decided.
Are we getting negative press in the international community that concerns you?
It does concern me because it's being fed by people who ought to know better from this country. And that's the
being
real
fed?
issue. Yes, right. No question.
According to Minister of Works, Deputy Prime Minister, they apparently are feeding them incorrect information.
It's incorrect, yes. Yeah.
But why would somebody who is a citizen of this country, who supposedly is a patriotic, loving citizen of this country, seek to destabilize the emotional and sovereign equilibrium of this country by feeding to the international community? You could say that around the water cooler. You could get drunk in a bar on Wolf Road and you could carry on and cuss you out and so on. But why go to the international community and seek to impugn the reputation and character of your country? Can you help me to understand that? You are an activist of sorts.
I can't, and I can ascribe various motives. They would all be uncharitable. And I don't understand. But, you know, that's their stock and trade.
Are these the hardcore, die-hard opposers? I call them opposition to the Progressive Liberal Party, or opposing and opposition to Fred Mitchell in particular?
There's that. I suppose those are all the motivations, I suppose. But, you know, many of these people just come off to me as unstable.
Unstable?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's the way it strikes me.
That's rather uncharitable. You're right.
It is. And
you couldn't help yourself just now. You had to let that one loose.
Yeah, if I were...
You call one of them Jack in the Box.
Yes, right. I mean, if I were in another forum, I'd say even worse things. But, you know, the fact is, and I said this, you know, the Freeport News ran an editorial on Saturday. And in the editorial, they said that, or the newspaper said that there must be balance in the government's policy. And the evidence is there is balance. There is no evidence that the policy is just this, you know, wild, unfettered, you know, whatever. And but the question I asked is, when I spoke to the Press Association, is where is the obligation to demand balance from the people who are criticizing this policy and saying demeaning things about the Department of Immigration, some of it actually defamatory. 3 expressions. First, they used institutional terrorism, and terrorism is a particular buzzword in this day and time that brings with it special dangers when you say that. When that didn't work, the next thing they said was, we are engaged in ethnic cleansing. Ethnic cleansing is a crime against humanity, which is the worst of the worst. And this is what they're accusing immigration officers and the governor of the Bahamas of doing. That means we're doing the same thing that those people did in Rwanda and in Bosnia, which is you pick out a group of people and you kill them, or you wipe them out, or you expel them based on their nationality or ethnicity. Where is the evidence of that? There is no evidence, and they can't find any. They come up with these individual cases, but every time you probe behind the case, it is totally false. And then the last thing was, they say we run Auschwitz in the Bahamas, which is a Nazi gas chamber, where they were gassing people and then hiding it from the world, saying it's not so. So is there evidence of that anywhere in the Bahamas? And no objective observer, none of the international organizations that have made all these commentaries about what the government is doing and so on and so forth, has brought these people to account for saying these irresponsible things. They just let them go, oh, well, it's, you know, it's fine. You can just go ahead and say that. And what concerns me is you see the leader of the opposition today gets up and he reads a human rights report, supposedly from the United States government, describing the state of play in the Bahamas, largely off anecdotal evidence. Now, what do you think? You have a case of a commissioner of police in St. Lucia who cannot travel to the United States today based on some decisions which the U.S. government made with regard to his so-called human rights record. And so what you're doing, these people, if a country like the United States is picking up information based on anecdotes, that's what they have in this report that the speakers allowed or proposes to allow the leader of the opposition to lay on the table of Parliament, right, which says that certain things about what happened in the Bahamas and all the rest of it. And so anecdotal evidence makes its way into the public domain, and people are making decisions on the future of our immigration officers, defense force officers, police officers, based on anecdotal evidence.
Unsubstantiated.
And that's the thing that disturbs me, and that's why I have tried on every occasion when these people make these irresponsible statements to put some countervailing or counterbalancing message in the public domain, so that this narrative is not adopted uncritically. And it's fine, you know, for Bahamians, I suppose, because people know these crackpots and who's a crackpot and who isn't, right? I mean, there's one who's right now on the WhatsApp mechanisms and Facebook spreading the most outrageous defamatory lies about the government, about the Prime Minister, who should be in jail. He really should be in jail, this individual. But that's what people do in this day and age. And I've said to my colleagues that as long as I have some input into public policy, I'm going to fill the space with the countervailing message. I'm not going to let people get away with talking, as Obi Bushkin likes to say, nonsense, and not answer it. Because the moment you leave the space unanswered, it's filled with other nonsense. And so we have an obligation to do it, and the public will then adopt.
It can make up its own mind.
Make up its mind.
Honourable Fred Mitchell is my guest this afternoon, Star 106, Cape Bahamas, Channel 5. Let me read to you this text message. Good day to you and Minister Fred. I'm a Jamaican, and my son's father is Bahamian by birth. My son was born here in the Bahamas at PMH. Jamaica considers my son a Bahamian and gave him 2 weeks to leave the country when we visited Jamaica. What do I need to do to get my son his status here in the Bahamas? My son already has a Bahamian travel document. This is an answer some questions that I would have. At the time of your son's birth, were you and the father married? Because that would answer all questions. But you go ahead, sir.
Yeah, well, sounds like that case I said earlier. Jamaica's constitution requires that mother to apply for citizenship of Jamaica because you don't get it conferred at birth. And he's entitled to get the citizenship, provided the mother's not married to the father.
Okay.
Yeah.
Meaning require the mother to apply for the son citizenship.
Yeah,
All right. That's the Constitution.
Of Jamaica. So
because if she was married to the Bahamian father, then the child would automatically be, no matter where in the world he was born,
right.
would automatically be
Bahamian. So
Bahamian.
he's considered Jamaican by our Constitution, and their Constitution says he's not Jamaican unless his mom applies for citizenship.
Yeah.
So that's a case of a stateless individual.
If the belongers permit virtually doesn't exist or doesn't now exist in law, then why does the department collect monies for it?
Because we anticipate the changes will be made
When?
shortly. I think give it 6 weeks or so.
All right.
We're almost at the point.
The
thing is,
legislation has been drafted, or you're just amending.
No,
you're amending.
It's drafted. It's already drafted. Everything's done.
I haven't received any draft copy for me to peruse and give my critical commentary.
Yeah, well, okay, I'll make sure you get one. But no, the thing is, we can give a status now. We can. The problem is the cost.
Yeah, but the status is permit. Yeah, all that kind of stuff. Anyhow, let's get to a break, sir, because we are not
So
going to
that's
take
why. But that was in answer to why we can legally take the applications, because we can give a status now, but it's the cost.
Yeah, I want to come back to. I want to move on to some other things here before we run out of time, because you always busy and you can never come on my show. So let me catch you while I got you. We're here with Honourable Fred Mitchell. We're coming back. Appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Couple of text messages, Mr. Lloyd. I want to ask the minister. I'm a Jamaican, married, been here. I have a child who's been here from grade 3. The child is now 20 in college on a permit to reside. Is he eligible to apply for permanent residency?
Yes.
Yes, he is. Again, a couple of things I'd ask, but anyhow, you say you're married. Is he married to a Bahamian? You married. What is the status of child born in the Bahamas after 1973 to unmarried parents? Bahamian father and Haitian mother who is now a Bahamian citizen years after the birth of the child. The mother has renounced the Haitian status to obtain Bahamian status.
Yeah, she has to apply for citizenship.
Has to apply. It's what happens at the birth of the child. What is the status then?
Yeah.
Okay? It's what happens at the birth of the child, the status. If you become a Bahamian citizen afterwards, you still have to make the application. If the child and your mother and father, at least one parent in this country, is a Bahamian, automatic Bahamian. Another question. Mr. Lloyd, thank you for your show. I would like to commend Senator Mitchell for simply doing his job. It is rare that we see in the government nowadays. I do not agree with everything that is going on in our immigration changes, but I respect his efforts to follow the laws of the land. This process is important, but hope we do not lose some brilliant future Bahamians in this venture.
Well, I mean, I take the praise that's given, and I understand the point which is being made. The interesting thing about this is that we have many examples that's been done in the States where kids who are athletes, for example, Carifta Games or Pan American Games, and they don't have Bahamian citizenship, very often we'll do a special meeting just to get them through. So that's happened.
Let's look at foreign affairs. And I have to ask you about Haiti. Are we doing anything that you did in the previous administration about sitting down with the Haitian government and saying, listen, we got a problem. We understand what's happening in Haiti. I tell you what, we need to establish something there in Port-au-Paix or wherever it is that they're leaving from, so we can have intelligence officers on the ground, immigration officers on the ground, and if you want to come to the Bahamas, you can make an application. Do we have that in place yet?
We signed agreements with them on the 28th of July last year.
Where we are now?
Well, you know, all of these things require resources and time and so on and so forth. So
don't have the resources.
Execution. Well, I can't say we don't have the resources, but you know, you have to wait till budget cycles and all the rest of that.
Understand.
Yeah.
Is this the same thing that's happening in any other country besides Jamaica? Sorry, Haiti.
Well, you
Jamaica?
spoke about Jamaica. We'll be hopefully opening a Consul General's office in Kingston shortly.
Cuba.
Mm-hmm.
Relationship with Cuba.
Excellent.
We have an embassy there.
We do.
any impact you see from whatever Obama has announced?
Only for the good benefit. I don't see a downside to it.
Okay. In terms of exchange opportunities and whatever other commercial opportunities, how would a mere Bahamian businessman who wants to do business in Cuba go about doing that business through the channels that we have formally established?
Well, I think Bahamian businesses have tried it before, and I think what they find is the regulations are a bit arcane and difficult to predict. So,
In Cuba?
yeah, so that's proven to be a challenge. But there have been reforms of their system in the last few years, so perhaps people will try again. Some people are actually operating there in telecommunications. Others are doing tour business. You know.
I'd like to ask you, I want your opinion about this. There's been some criticism that we are getting a little too cozy from an investment standpoint with China. There is now activity, obviously, on Cable Beach. We are proposing that there will be something happening downtown. I don't know if that's a formal agreement signed with regard to the redevelopment of Bay Street. Certainly we know that.
The reconstruction and purchase and development.
Well, we know about Hilton.
Yeah.
We know about Hilton, but I'm talking about the redevelopment of Bay Street.
Yeah.
Can you say anything about that? Is the Chinese getting involved in the redevelopment of Bay Street, becoming a major player?
You know, I'm just concerned that much of this commentary about Chinese is racist, and you know, you have to be very.
How do you
careful.
say it's racist? Why do you say it's racist? We have
I-
always
you know,
had a concern, rightly or
No, I'm
wrongly,
not
about
saying-
giving away the country
no,
for
sorry,
foreigners.
I didn't say it is racist. I'm saying that I'm concerned that it just comes off that way because the fact is it's capital that you're looking for to develop your country.
Yeah, but you want to put all your eggs in one basket? Your own colleague, the Minister of Works?
The economy is owned by the Americans, not.
Yeah, but that's America. Can we talk about the Bahamas? I understand what's happening with the Americans, but the Bahamas, your own colleague, the Deputy Prime Minister of Works, himself had concerns. He expressed that right on our radio station.
I think perhaps because people are worried themselves. But I mean, what I'm saying is, you know, you gotta be careful in this world. You know, you have to get capital. There's no moral element to accepting Chinese capital, and there's nothing intrinsically wrong with accepting Chinese capital.
Nothing
and,
is.
And
Any concerns about imperialistic tendencies by anybody?
what are they going to do? I mean, you know.
What you mean? What they're going to do?
The place is thousands of miles away from here, and they can't take the land anywhere. Can't.
But
in the
we
meantime,
might have
in the meantime, they've got what? So is it $17 trillion in reserves? They're lending it out at 2% interest. I mean, what do you got to complain about? And they're not asking. There are no conditionalities to it. You know, so I'd say what Joe Biden said when he was speaking to the prime ministers last year in Trinidad. He said, you know, U.S. hasn't got any money to give you, and he just repeated it when we were in Washington. If you figure we're going to give you a check, we ain't got nothing to give you. He says, if you can get it from the Chinese, God bless you.
You know something? I marvel at you. You know, you're something else.
How's that?
About 20 years ago, you got up on your bully pulpit and you talked about the creolization of this country. Creolization. In other words, you were concerned that the Bahamas was being overrun by Haitians.
No, I wasn't.
Yes, you were, Mr. Minister. Yes, you were. Because I came to your defense, as a matter of fact. I remember I was a fledgling talk show host back in the day, and your concern was we are getting to the place where, if we're not careful, the Bahamas will become too creolized, if I may use that term. Do you have any concern whatsoever? It may not be legitimate or it may not be sustained by any empirical data, but do you have any concern that if you get into bed with a powerful nation like China, you got a stadium there, okay, it's a gift to us. They're out there by Bahama, they're all on Bay Street now with the Hilton, and they could be any number of other places because they got $17 trillion in reserves, lending it out at 2.5% or whatever it is. We need the money. That, you know, they might say, hey, okay, fine, folks, let's go to the Bahamas, take up residence because we own part of them anyhow.
No more than I'd be concerned the Commonwealth Bank lend you money for furniture.
That's Bahamian. That's Bahamian.
understand.
I don't have no problem with that.
Yeah, but you know, or you know, the fact that you know people were complaining, oh, the Jamaicans are going to take over because the kids like reggae music. I mean, be serious. Jeepers, you know, so they like reggae music. That's what they like. I mean, but culture is dynamic, and this country has sufficient confidence and strength in its own abilities to withstand that sort of stuff. And the Chinese have no designs on the Bahamas in that way. They don't. So I I think that you've got smart kids coming up, much smarter than we are, much better educated. I don't have any concerns about that at all. No.
I'm disappointed in your taking off your activist hat and all that kind of stuff. You still got to have some fire, my brother. I mean, here's this. I agree that all students should have photo ID and we need to have statistics about who is in our country. I applaud the efforts of Minister Mitchell. However, what is the procedure? What happens if parents do not have the funds? What is the role of the teachers administrators? Says Mrs. Wilson, PUT
The
president.
minister says that, the director advised me today that the fees can be waived. So that has to be a policy decision by the government, on whether you do it. But I don't, I hear people talking about they don't have the money. They have the money. Give me a break. Come on.
Listen, how are things going in Fox Hill? You're a politician. I understand that. Good afternoon, Jeff. Can you ask the minister, is it fair to say policy is flawed and lacks substance? However, before we can curb this immigration problem, to deal with it from head to tail?
I don't understand that.
I don't either. Can you ask the minister, is it fair to say the policy is flawed and lacks substance? However, before we can curb this immigration problem, to deal with it?
Policy is fair and it's not flawed. That's the answer to that question.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now, how's Fox Hill? You feel satisfied if the elections were held today, you'd be returned as a member of parliament?
I think I'll manage.
You'll manage.
Yeah.
It'll be a tight fight, a close race.
Always will be.
Always will be.
Yeah.
Why should the people of Fox Hill re-elect you as their member of parliament? You have an opportunity to speak to them this afternoon. Are you there often enough? Do they see you on the ground, or you come by every Christmas and Mother's Day and bring your little things and so on? Are you there at funerals? Do you answer their concerns? Do you have meetings with them?
Yeah, I think I've been a good representative. I mean, I like what I do. I like them. I love them.
They like you?
I think so. And I get along with the whole, I don't get aroused with people.
Okay.
So.
Good day, Mr. Mitchell. And his government is to be commended for the work that is being done on our immigration matters. Too long, nothing was being done. Countries all over the world have done what we are now trying to do. So somebody please tell me, what is the problem? Continue to put laws in place to better our country. Everyone is doing what they want, but when the Bahamas decides to put these same laws in place, it's a problem. You all just keep working. I love it.
I think that sums up
Sentiment of Bahamians.
Yeah,
Generally.
I think so generally. I mean, people may have little differences here or there. I think the latest thing is the kids who are, and I promised I was going to stop doing this. I keep calling these young men and women kids, right? But
when you get to your senior status in life, you
got
to
all exercise today because the prime minister said something, and they said, "Oh, he's not supporting this." And I said, "Look, I told people, that this is how life operates in the government. He's the head of the government, and he has to express to the country the balance of all the competing factors, and." So you can't read too much into statements. The fact is the generality of the law is supported by everyone in the government. The government's unanimous in this position that there has to be reform, and that has to go forward. I don't think people ought to have any concerns about any division on that. And I said in the House today that many of these constituent groups have been wanting to meet with me to discuss this or that, and I've resisted all of the meetings because I don't want to be put in a position where it seems like I'm bargaining with somebody on this or that or other. Right now, we need to get through this policy, get it established, break the back of it, so to speak. If people have concerns, the Prime Minister, the Deputy Prime Minister have agreed to meet with any constituent group that has a concern. They're my bosses. You go talk to them. They'll say whatever their position is, whatever the government's position is, and the decisions and advice would feed back down to us. But for the moment, the Minister for Immigration is moving forward on this track to get this problem under control. That's the remit, and that's how life is at the moment.
Finally, we have got an opportunity now to go to China without a visa. That's because of your great and outstanding work. I congratulate you. Proud to know that you're my friend, and you should be proud that I'm your friend. Tell the people you're proud of them, your friend.
Very proud.
Thank you.
I'm very
Where is the next breakthrough? Which other countries now you're trying to make sure that European Union, right?
That's already done. Too.
So where is the next?
USA.
How far are we along in that
That's a
process?
tough nut to crack.
Wait, but we don't need a visa to go there.
Well, that's what they say, but if you try to get him from another country...
Well, I mean, come on. I mean, that's, yeah, you don't need a visa. However, if you go through a non-pre-clearance place, because that's what you mean.
Yes, you do.
But you think it's going to be difficult?
Yes. Big country, they don't see it as in their interest. We're little people. The numbers aren't sufficient. But, in trying to make the case, I said to them, if 350,000 of us Bahamians decide to move to the States tomorrow, it wouldn't really make a difference. So I don't understand. But
the thing is, we sit on their doorstep. We are a national security interest of theirs.
yeah.